As we light our chalice this morning, if you're on Zoom, please make sure you're muted, and Shannon will drop the words in the chat box. Here in the sanctuary, please rise as you are inspired and able. We will speak aloud together. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need. For these high purposes do we unite in worship. Please remain standing because it's time for that warm connection of welcoming each other into worship. We invite you to turn to your neighbor and offer a greeting of peace and welcome.
Well, Friday was April Fool's Day. Nobody really knows where it came from, which seems kind of appropriate. It didn't seem like many people were doing April Fools this year. A lot of people feel like it's become tiresome and meaningless, and the jokes and pranks are juvenile and predictable and maybe just plain dumb. And sometimes that the jokes are mean and cruel deceptions that play on people's gullibility. And they have a point. Making fools of other people isn't very noble or even very interesting. On the other hand, playing the fool, or being a fool with a capital F, has a rich lineage. Because being a big F fool, a great fool, puts us into ancient archetypal territory, the land where the holy fools and the sacred clowns and the tricksters walk the land. Fast-talking crazy wisdom, and delivering punchlines so fast you barely have time to laugh before the next one lands. Those archetypes are all related, but somewhat distinct, so I'm going to take a few minutes of your time and explore some of them. Holy fools are specific to Christianity. And to be a holy fool was to be innocent in the eyes of God. Being a fool for Christ meant giving up one's worldly possessions, flouting social customs to challenge accepted norms and deliver prophecies, and mocking those with pretensions to being holier than thou. Many of the Orthodox churches saw this form of asceticism as a vocation, a deliberate and difficult spiritual path, holding that holy fools voluntarily take up the guise of insanity in order to conceal their perfection from the world and thus avoid praise. St. Basil was such a figure. He went naked, covered only by his long beard, and wearing chains that jingled with each step. He lived among the market stalls of Moscow's Red Square, going nude in the summer and through the harsh Russian winters. Any money he was given was immediately spent on food and clothing for other poor people if he didn't just give it away to them at once. It is said that the Tsar Ivan the Terrible feared no one but Basil. And the story goes that he went to Ivan's palace in the Kremlin and forced the Tsar to eat raw meat during Lent, saying, "Why abstain from meat when you murder men?" The Tsar let him live. Jim Forrest, author and secretary of the Orthodox Peace Fellowship, writes, "Holy fools pose the question, are we keeping heaven at a distance by clinging to the good regard of others, prudence, and what those around us regard as sanity? The holy fools shout out with their mad words and deeds that to seek God is not necessarily the same thing as to seek sanity. We need to think long and hard about sanity, a word most of us cling to with a steel grip. Does fear of being regarded by others as insane confine me to a cage of responsible behavior that limits my freedom and cripples my ability to love? And is it, in fact, such a wonderful thing to be regarded as sane? Adolf Eichmann the chief administrator of the Holocaust, was declared quite sane by the psychiatrists who examined him before his trial. End quote. The madness of the holy fools was ambiguous and could be real or a form of theater. And some of them we would now consider to be suffering from some form of mental illness. But they were believed to have been divinely inspired and therefore able to challenge people and their behavior and speak truth, which others could not. Which brings me to sacred clowns. Sacred clowns seem to be particular to Native North America. Sacred clowns are different from jesters or fools and have quite a bit of trickster in them. There are the Hopi Koshare who follow behind the neat roads of Kachina dancers, dancing out of step, singing one beat behind. These are the confusing individuals. Men dressed as women, women dressed as men, old men acting young men acting old. They're lovers, teasing the young women and the tourist ladies with their cameras. The unmarried men, or women or other men, whacking the crowd with giant mock genitalia. And there are the Heyokas of the Lakota people, the contraries who do strange things. He says yes when he means no. He rides his horse backward. He wears his moccasins or boots the wrong way. When he's coming, he's really going. When it's real hot, a Heyoka will shiver with the cold, put on all his clothes and blankets, he'll build a big fire and complain that he is freezing to death. In the wintertime, during a blizzard, the Heyoka will be sweating. It's too hot for him. He's taking off all his clothes and going for a stroll in the snow. These are only two examples among many. What's most obvious about these sacred clowns is that they are full of contradictions. They're a mix of innocence and wisdom. They act foolishly, trampling the boundaries of proper behavior. Although not clowns, two-spirit people play a similar role by blurring the lines of traditional gender roles and expectations. And they all play an important social function. They turn the world inside out and upside down, and they show the limits of the world by playing at the boundaries, acting in non-ordinary ways while doing so. And in this way, they contrast their own behavior with the regular order of both the mundane and the sacred worlds. And in the midst of the chaos they create, they speak truth to power. They say things others are too afraid to say about the social and spiritual life of the community. They ask difficult questions through jokes and nonsense, satire and mockery. Which brings us to the Buddhist traditions. Now, Zen happened when Buddhism met Taoism in 600 AD China. It spread to Japan, where it flowered. Some Zen lineages trace their beginnings back to 500 BC India, to a meeting of the Buddha and more than 1,000 of his disciples. The Buddha held up a white flower. All the other disciples just looked on without knowing how to react, but the monk Kasyapa smiled faintly. And the Buddha picked him as the one who truly understood him and was worthy to be his successor. And this direct pointing to reality was the beginning of Zen. The crazy wisdom of the Zen master transforms ordinary experience back into ordinary experience. Most experience is extraordinary, but overlaid with our perceptions and judgments and filtered through our pragmatic desire to find a use for everything. Zen is to move beyond desire, ideas, or words, and to experience each moment without qualification. Zen fools have a direct experience of the world from moment to moment, making them capable of spontaneity and playfulness. The Zen master Shikung asked a disciple if he could take hold of empty space. And the disciple made a grasping movement in the air with his hand, but Shikung explained, "You got nothing." And the disciple then asked, "Well, what then is your way?" Whereupon Shikung took a hold of the disciple's nose and gave it a sharp twist and called out, "That is the way to take hold of empty space." When we give up trying to grasp reality with words, when we give up the hope of trying to understand reality through logic and language, we might just start experiencing it directly without our minds getting in the way. The term crazy wisdom roughly translates to the Tibetan term yeshe cholwa, the chaos of primordial wisdom. It's associated with Chogyam Trungpa, who described crazy wisdom as an infinitely recursive process of inquiry. He said, we don't fixate on an answer, we go further. Why is that the case? We look further and further and we ask, why is this so? Why is there spirituality? Why is there awakening? Why is there this moment of relief? Why is there such a thing as discovering the pleasure of spirituality? Why? My 2-year-old son was a perfect crazy wisdom master. We go on deeper and deeper until we reach the point where there is no answer. At that point, we tend to give up hope of an answer, or anything whatsoever for that matter. And this hopelessness is the essence of crazy wisdom. It is hopeless, utterly hopeless. And there is power in this hopelessness that the hopeful cannot know. Existential freedom. Freedom from seriousness, freedom from the pettiness of life, freedom from the gravity of death, freedom for the need for an answer, freedom even from the need to be free. And such freedom gives us power over power with humor and insight. And I love this particular quote from Trungpa. He says, the bad news is that you're falling through the air. There's nothing to hang on to. There's no parachute. The good news is there's no ground. Now, there seem to be two major currents swirling in this ocean of divine madness. There's the current that carries the fools and the jesters and the tricksters and the clowns, the ones who call out the czar in his palace, the righteous in their sanctimony, the ones who remind us not to take ourselves too seriously, who ask us to doubt the social truths we're so sure of, to re-examine them and perhaps return to them with our certainty renewed, or not. Perhaps there really is something wrong with the things in our city, in our bioregion, our country, our world, and the jesters and the clowns and the fools are right, and we need to take a deeper look. And they haven't disappeared. They've just moved to late-night television and YouTube videos, to rap and hip-hop, to street theater, to stand-up shows, to open mics and Twitter, and they are everywhere, and these times require them. And then there's the crazy wisdom current that does the same thing to our individual certainties, to get us to move past our mundane perceptions and see the divine in everything, and then realize that the mundane was the divine all along. Or is it the other way around? The goal is to set us free from fear and anxiety and existential dread, to awaken our wonder at the majesty of it all, and awaken our laughter at the absurdity of it all. Now, how do we invoke the power of the holy fools and the sacred clowns and the sacred wisdom in a time when it feels like the inmates are running the asylum? Back in the 4th century AD, St. Anthony the Great said, "A time is coming when men will go mad, and when they see someone who is not mad, they will attack him, saying, 'You are mad. You are not like us.'" Perhaps that time is now, or yesterday and tomorrow. Who are the inmates, and is this the asylum, and who is mad and who is not? Do not be certain of your answers. We point fingers at the mirror. Break it. And when the cracked pieces of the mirror lie on the floor and the spell is broken, here we are. The sun rises and sets, and there is work to be done. The children need to be fed, the dishes washed, the trash taken out. The world is the same, but different. What to do? And this turns out to be a rather practical matter, so I'll end with these instructions from Tom Robbins. Crazy wisdom is the philosophical worldview that recommends swimming against the tide, cheerfully seizing the short end of the stick, embracing insecurity, honoring paradox, courting the unexpected, celebrating the unfamiliar, shunning orthodoxy, volunteering for tasks nobody else wants or dares to do, and breaking taboos in order to destroy their power. It's the wisdom of those who turn the tables on despair by lampooning it, and who seek neither authority nor submit to it, to enlarge the soul, light of the brain, and liberate the spirit. End quote. And in the words of Hillel, let us go and learn it.